All right. Good morning once again. So far so good. Can anybody recap what we have actually covered so far on JavaScript? Nobody? Mention any topics we have discussed. We have discussed JavaScript what? Functions. So how do we define functions? They are block of what? Code that can what? That can be what? Executed. I think that was the last topic, right? That was the last topic. We have also discussed JavaScript control structure, right? Here we talk about the conditional statements, the loops, and I said you should go and research on one of them. Give us an assignment. I'm not sure if we have done it. So on a very blessed day, I will ask for all my assignments. So let's proceed because we could not meet on Tuesday. I don't want to take our time. All right. This section we'll be looking at JavaScript DOM. JavaScript DOM. JavaScript DOM. So let me start by creating a HTML file, which I've already created. And let me just activate my HTML default structure. And I said we are looking at JavaScript DOM. That is the topic. So I'll create an external JavaScript file. Converse here, I'll say DOM.js. So let me use comments, introduction. So JS DOM. And then, of course, we have to connect the two files since we are using external methods. I have to go to the HTML and then link the two files together. That will do that from just before the closing body. I will write script tag with the search or the source attributes, and then slash, and then target the JavaScript file. So with this, I've just linked them together. So let's go back to the JavaScript file. Let's start with the definition. What is DOM? What is JavaScript DOM? Right. JavaScript's document object model. That is the full meaning of DOM. Documents. Document objects. Document objects. Model. Document object model. That is the full meaning of DOM. And how do we define it? JavaScript DOM is a programming interface. Is a programming interface for HTML and XML. HTML and what? XML. Are we together? HTML and XML. So the XML represents extensible markup language. Extensible markup language. So just like an extended version, an advanced version or another version of HTML. Are we together? I said JavaScript DOM document object model is a programming interface of HTML and XML documents. Full stop, just to explain further what is actually the main function. Full stop, you write, it represents the structure of a document as a tree-like data structure. It represents the structure. It represents the structure of a document as a tree-like data structure, allowing developers to interact with and manipulate the document's elements. I want you to underline that section. Allowing developers to interact with and manipulate the document's elements. So I want to pause here and okay, let me just mention all the things we can actually manipulate with these concepts. I said with and manipulate the document elements, attributes, and contents. So I want you to also underline the two key or the three main things we can manipulate or we can select with the JavaScript word DOM. DOM objects, elements, attributes, and what again? Contents. Now, I want to throw this question to us. I want you to look at the screen. The whole of this area that I have highlighted, what is it called? Between those three things mentioned, between elements, attributes, contents, what I highlighted can be which one of them? Is it elements or attributes or contents? Elements. So what is HTML elements? The combination of what? Two or more what? Tags, right? Forms what? Forms HTML document. Now, HTML elements are the individual what? Tags. The content these elements, which are now known as a tag, generates or generating are the what? The content now, right? What these tags generate, they are called what? The contents. That is why most tags or 90% tags will always give you this section, right? This is where we are expected to define what? The content, what we want it to output via a browser. So now that we understand that, if we go back to the notes now, the definition, that last part that says allowing developers to do what? Interact. Now look at it here. That is, if you are in JavaScript file, how do you interact with what? These elements. How do you interact with, for example, if I have p tag here, welcome to Digitech Zeal Hub. How do you interact with this? For example, if I want to select this particular element from I want to select this particular element while I am in my JavaScript what? File. How do I interact with that element? That is the topic we are talking about. That is what we are about to learn. We have been using one of them all this while. but I decided not to touch others because of a topic like this that I'm going to focus on. The one we have used so far is what? Document.getElement by what? ID. It's one of the JavaScript what? DOM. Are you with me? It's one of the methods we use in manipulating elements, contents, and what? Attributes of your HTML tag. All right, so let's take it further. I just established it now. I think I still need to explain it this way for better understanding. You see, what we are about to learn, CSS has its own version. Do you agree with me? Yes, sir. What is the CSS version of what we are about to learn? So if we can say CSS DOM, how does CSS manipulate elements? By ID, right? By class, right? By what? The tag name. And also at times with what? The attributes. That same thing is what we are learning, but this time around, it is the JavaScript what? Version. Are you with me? Okay, now let's quickly look at some of the key concepts so that each time I use any of these terms, we know what exactly I am talking about. Right. JavaScript DOM key concepts. JavaScript DOM key concepts. JavaScript DOM keyword concepts. Number one is node. So when you are learning this topic, there are certain terms you need to understand. One of them is what? Node. So what is node? Let's quickly define it. One, let's define node. Node, elements, attributes, and texts are represented as node in document object modeling tree. In document object modeling what? Tree. Let me repeat it. I said what? Elements, command attributes, and texts are represented as what? Node. In what? The DOM, the document object model tree. Now, this is what I want us to understand. I want to make sure that you understand the logic behind it so that, because it sounds threatening. JavaScript DOM, you know, it look like one big thing that can scare a beginner. Let me break it down. Your family, in fact, everything we are talking about is about the relationship between what? One element and what? The other. It is on that basis that you now know how to manipulate those elements. So one thing that must be established is you knowing the what? How does element A relate with what? Element what? B. If not, you would not know how to perform this DOM. The first definition, I mentioned tree, right? I say tree-like, right? Tree-like data what? Structure. That is where I'm driving to. Some explanation, they will use family tree. How many of us know what is called family tree? Can you explain it to us? The formation of what? The family, right? That start from where? Okay, the grandparents. You now have branch, right? The children that you gave birth to, right? You now have grand what? Children. And then you continue like that. So what you are trying to do is that you are trying to establish relationships so that you can easily assess anybody among them. I want you to bring it to what we are talking about now.
Now, let me picture this so that you understand it. Look at this. This is HTML model. Because we also have HTML DOM. If you are asked tomorrow as a developer, how do you model this? If I am to model this in alignment with that family tree, so I am going to have what? This tag first, right? Because this one is just to initiate or to acknowledge the language type, right? So the main code starts from where? Here. So which means that I can bring out a box here. This is one thing some of us do not know. That is why we are having issue with, CSS sometimes. When we want to style an element, we don't know how to reach out to it. Because number one, we don't even understand the relationship between those elements to know whether you are to say what div space what p. When we're styling, we're using things like that, right? Which I call CSS combinator. To remember, right? That is what we're using parents to access what? The child. That is CSS DOM. And that is you understanding also the HTML what? Model. So if you look at what I'm doing here, so this is the HTML what? Tag. Don't mind I'm using digital pencil. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to what? I am visualizing. I am conceptualizing the whole of this. I am bringing it in a way that a layman should be able to know, oh, so this is a structure. That is why when they say HTML is a language that defines website structure, you don't understand where that word is coming from. It's the layout. It's the modeling. What is molding? The website has a square shape or a rectangular shape, right? That means something molded to define that shape. So now we can say that from here, we now have branches. And what are the branches that we have? What are the branches that we have? Now, if you look at this, inside it, you have the direct branch called what? Head, right? So this one is what? One of the branch. You see the way I am modeling it now. I have another branch from that HTML box, which is what? Now, inside this now, that is where I will now list what? This. So meaning that what? Inside this is just like another one of the direct child that gave birth to what? 3 what? Children. So I will have to extend that from here, another branch here, and then mention what? Those 3 children. So that is how you continue. So what I'm doing now is what? I am modeling the HTML what? Document. I am establishing the relationship. How one element. It is this understanding that makes me to be flexible when I was communicating with the CSS. Am I communicating? Yes, sir. Because I understood that, if I want to talk to P tag, I understand that there is a parent element. So if I call the parent, CSS can easily trace the elements. So when we say family tree, if you go to my village now, Igbide or Ibrede, and start shouting, prosper, prosper, I can tell you that you will shout from morning till night. Nobody will answer you. Nobody will even know the prosper you are talking about. But just try and trace me with my grandpa name. Just mention Eguero Prosper. That Eguero that you mentioned alone, will direct somebody straight to where you can access me. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. That is what we are talking about here. So even in JavaScript, we need to first of all understand the HTML structure. What is the layout of the HTML? So that you know whether you are to get element what? By what? It's what? Selector, or it what? A tag name, or it what? ID. All this one we have been using only what? ID. So we're going to discover others. So I believe with what I've explained, someone is able to understand the entire concept of today's topic. It's a serious topic that once you understand it, then you can easily interpret what? Most of the JavaScript code when it comes to modeling elements. So now we are still on the key concept, and I've mentioned what? 1. Now, let me trace it. Now, can we say that this one now, is it a node? Because we are still explaining the key concept of JavaScript what? DOM. What I highlighted now, doc type, HTML, is it a node? How did I define node? I say node represents what? Element, attribute, and what? Text, right? What I highlighted now, if it is not a text, it is an element, right? So this is a node. That is why somebody can say, okay, in the village, our family is very large. So when they want to distribute money, when somebody died, they will distribute it node by node. As well, how do I put it? You know, they will say, okay, this one man gave birth to 3 children, right? Each of those 3 children, they are different nodes. Oh, you know that. So they will not share the money per node. That is what, if they give to the first child, all the children under that first child, all of them will distribute it and share it themselves. That is what, when the family is large, that is how they share things, so that there won't be any problem. So if by tomorrow, the money given to the node 1 could not reach out to all the people under him and squander the money, he cannot blame what? The extended what? Family. So he did not deliver. So the same thing we're talking about here. So this is a node, is an element that defines the type of document you are writing, right? This is what? Another what? Node. Under this node, you now have sub, you now have children. The next key concept, number 2, elements. Let's understand what elements are. Elements. 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 Are we together? Elements. Elements or HTML elements, such as, or let's say elements are the HTML view content builder. Elements are the HTML content builder. That is why if you are learning Elementor, if you are learning the WordPress, you'll be hearing what? Elementor. Elementor. That Elementor is what is replacing what? Your HTML work. All the content you will have designed with the HTML is what that Elementor, they refer as what? Elementor builder. So HTML is the builder. Example of what? Element, p tag, quickly. P tag, div, image tag, and etc. So all of that should be referred to as what? Elements. Am I still making sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I just want to mention, because when we start looking at this DOM, you'll be hearing me using the word element, node. That is why I just want to settle there, so that when I use them, you know what I'm talking about. The next one is attributes. Attributes. I know that I must have explained attribute, but I know that people eat too much rice. You must have forgotten what? The attribute. Let me still define it. Am I lying? Why are you reacting? Eh? Okay, sir, what is attribute? Define attribute. Yes. Right. Attributes. Attributes. In this case, attributes or properties, or attributes are properties of elements. Attributes are properties of elements, such as ID, class, sROC, which represents what? Source. So any of these, each time I use the word attribute, as we'll be discussing JavaScript DOM, it means I could be referring to what? ID of an element, right?
Yes, sir.
Or what? Class of an element, or what? Let's get this settled. The last one is events. Events. How many of us have heard of JavaScript events or event listener? I know. I know people that have finished the car before they are here. I know people that are researching. Everybody here must have researched and seen what? Events. What are events? Events, right, which are also known as what? User interactions. Events are users what? Interactions, such as clicks. This is what user used to talk to the content of your website element. Users interaction, such as what? Clicks, mouse overs, keyboard inputs, and it is when we were in CSS. Remember that we use what? When we were in CSS, we use what? We use hover, right?
Yes, sir.
So these are events. So users are the ones that use all this, that make you program them for the user in order to interact with your content, your web content. So I believe these are the 4 keywords concepts. So the word concept can be replaced as what? JavaScript word, DOM word, key terminologies. Are you with me? Key terms, good. So which means that now we are free to launch into the deep. Let's quickly go into the topic properly. Let's go into the topic properly. So, but before we start taking them one after the other, let me quickly highlight. Definitely you take some home to go and research because there are much, but I'll take the ones that the training mandate us to train you. Now, let's look at subheading. Common JavaScript DOM method. Common JavaScript DOM method. Common what? JS what? DOM method. Number 1, we have get. Number 1, we have get. Get element. Remember that what? These are case words sensitive, right? The E should be what? Capital letter. Get element by ID. This is 1. This one has been our regular custom, right?
Yes, sir.
Just that there's no way I could explain all those things without what? Using one of them, because we must reference HTML elements. Number 2 is get elements. Get elements. Now, S is there. Look at the element. This one, take note of that. This element is what? Elements. Get elements by class name. This is camel case, right? Right? This is camel case. Please take note of the case sensitivity. The third one is get elements. Get elements by tag name. Get elements by tag name, comma. The fourth one is create elements. Create elements. The fifth one is append. Append child. And then the sixth one is remove child. The seventh one is add event listener. And then, of course, the last one from the one I have for you is remove event listener. So you see all these that I have mentioned, they are all what? They are what? JavaScript what? Document objects modeling methods. But it's just that depending on the program you are writing and how you want to relate with the element, you see, what actually determines the one you need per time is how your HTML what? Document is modeled. How is it structured? Is it that you have a div? In that div, you now have another div. In that second div, you now have 3 different children. That is what will determine, okay, how do you want to select them? How do you want to interact with them? So you now begin to check any of these and know which one is better. All right. So now we have some properties that we need to understand. Before I start taking them, I just want to give out this general information. So let's look at what? JavaScripts. I'm still coming back to each of them. I just want to conclude this part because as I'm coming back to each of them, we'll be practicalizing them. So I just want to settle all the theory aspects. So now, JavaScript common DOM property. So properties are different from what? The main object themselves. So properties are like what you use alongside with the main object. So there is no way when you are communicating some of these main objects, you will also be referencing properties. And when you see them in JavaScript code or scripts, you understand, oh, this is what this one is talking about. So the first one is what? Test contents. The first one is test content. Test what? Content. These are the things you'll be hearing and where we start now. Test content is also case what? Sensitive. The C is what? Capital letter. Then we have inner. We have been using this one since inner what? HTML, right? Yes, so all this while you are using inner HTML is an example of what? Yeah, DOM what? Property. Good. Please get it right. What is the function of this one? I know by now we know this one. We know what we normally achieve with this one, right? This one is used to hold what? The HTML content in that method you are using, right? Good. Now, the next one is class lists. You come across JavaScript file, even though we are in the era of AI. So why I am explaining all this is that when AI generates any code, and you see things like this, you have to interpret it. Yes, then the next one is ID. So all these are DOM property. SRC. Parents, you'll be hearing things like parent node as we proceed. Parent node. You'll be hearing children. All these are what? JavaScript what? DOM properties. So now let's quickly go for the application properly now. And we are starting with what? We are starting this way. But just to recap before we proceed with the application, I said JavaScript DOM what? Represents your web page as a tree of objects. I don't know if I did not give us this definition. This is just to complement the one I gave to us. Alternative definition. Write it down to help you. Alternative definition for JavaScript DOM. I said JavaScript DOM represents your web page as a tree of objects. Represents your web page as what? Tree of objects. A tree of what? Objects. Are we communicating? That JavaScript can access and manipulate. Underline that last part. That JavaScript can access and manipulate. JavaScript can access and manipulate. So example of what it can manipulate: change text, images, and even style dynamically. Note this part. Example of what the JavaScript DOM can manipulate. Number one is what? Changing of texts, right? Images and style. See, we are going to find out in a moment that sometimes you don't need CSS. You can style, you can communicate CSS directly from what? JavaScript. Yes. But CSS is the main language for that purpose, right? But when you are writing JavaScript and you don't want to, maybe you just want a minor CSS what? Appearance, which you can easily what? Apply in JavaScript. You may not need to bother yourself to start creating another word CSS file. Okay, so let's look at the first one is what? The first set of this DOM we want to look at is what? Selecting elements. So right, the first task is, let's start with the first task. The first task is what? The first task is selecting. So we want to look at how we can use this DOM to select elements. Selection or selecting elements. Selecting elements. Selecting elements. Note, before changing anything on a web page under selecting elements, so we want to look at those JavaScript DOM method for selecting elements. So we want to look at this category. And I said before changing anything on a web page command, you must select, or if I'm to use a very layman term to describe what we mean by select, is what? Grab. Put in brackets, or grab. And this is what, for you to grab anything in the HTML and add the action. Please, I want you to pause and listen to this. When we started this program, we said that HTML is for determining the structure of a website, right? CSS is for what? Beautification, right? Why JavaScript is for what? Adding interactivity, which is a live actions, right? You must grab the element you want to add the action on. That is why we have to prioritize what? This topic. For example, now you have this as different elements. How do you grab this one in JavaScript? How do you grab it? Because this is a standard JavaScript. How can you from here select this particular element without you coming here? That is what brought about what? This topic called what? DOM. So let me continue with that. I said what? Before changing anything on a web page, you must select or what? Grab the element you want to work with. You must select or grab the element you want to work with. Am I communicating? So now let's practicalize it. So the first JavaScript selection what? Method is get elements. Get elements. Remember that we listed them, right? Get elements by what? By ID. By ID. That is the first one we want to practicalize. So at this point, I don't want to assume that we have been using it. I have to formally explain it again, because this is the right place where you are supposed to learn it. But because as we are practicing those few things we have learned, there's no way we can speak JavaScript without what? Using one of the, without grabbing what? At least one element. So write note on this. I'm defining this now. What is get element by ID? Right, get element by ID is a JavaScript DOM method used for selecting elements using its ID attribute. Its ID attribute. Its ID what? Attribute. So in other words, how do you use it to select the element? With what? Its attribute. That is the reason why, look up, that is the reason why you notice that when we create an element and we want to use it to render JavaScript what? Function, then we come here and do things like this ID, right? And then we say what? Demo. So which means that what? We were actually grabbing HTML elements using what? ID as an attribute. So let's practicalize it. So I have a JavaScript what? Example, right? Example. You copy the code I'm writing. This is how you write your example, please. Your example, you write HTML code, then JavaScript code, each one, right? Because each one I'll be writing what? The HTML code, JavaScript code. Then example, you write under HTML code. Let's say here I have I'm changing it from demo. Let's say what will I use now? Let's say digits. So write the whole of this code in your HTML. Example of what? This method, HTML code. You write this line. That is what? You have to create an HTML element with what? An ID. Why? Because the method you are about to particularize involve you what? Grabbing an element by what? An ID what? Attribute, as it is what? Defined here. Now, your JavaScript code will now be let's, for example, let's DI. Is DI in this case, remember that in our last topic, we talked about what? JavaScript what? Function declaration and what? Expression. Can anybody that have not eaten too much rice, because we are approaching Christmas, can anybody still tell us how we differentiated function declaration and what? Function versus what? Function what? Expression. The lady among us, ladies, they don't forget this easily. Don't disappoint ladies. So. Can you help us? One is the function is stored in a variable, while the other one is not stored in what? A variable. Now, once you say di equals to, that means what? You are about what? Storing what? A whole function. A whole function. And what is the function? Document dot what? Get element by ID. You are acknowledging it in a storage. You see some of these things as we are learning that you don't know that if you don't practice A, if you manage to come to class for B, you have not initialized A, you're going to have issue. These are like relay race. There's a reason why I came with that topic. There's a reason why I have not. Somebody will have been wondering that up till now he has not taught what? JavaScript what? Array and object, right? I'm coming to it because I cannot be talking about those things without you understanding what? This method. After this topic now, that is the next topic. So what we are about to do is that we want to grab the whole of the method and save it in a variable. That is the logic here. And the variable that is holding what? What is it holding? Document what? Dot get element by ID. Okay? Element by ID. What is the ID? Look up here. What is the ID in your HTML? The ID is what? Dig, right? So I make sure that the name is different. The name of the variable where I am storing it is different from what? The ID. Are you with me? So here is what? DG. So that is the first thing. Now I will end it here. You see the logic now. But all this while, what we are doing is that what we will continue with what dot inner HTML. Now we are breaking it down. We are making our code more readable. So the first thing I am doing, okay, the whole of this method, let me store it in a variable. Okay, now look up now. Now, if you now come here, you will now do what? The ID. What is the ID? Sorry, the variable. Get the logical. Pay good attention here. Pay good attention here. Now, this is a variable, right? In this variable, what do you have there? Quickly, what do you have there? The whole of this, right? So, which means that at the moment, this is representing what? Which means that what? In the whole of, in this code, you already grab what? You have already grabbed what? The whole of this. Do you agree with me? So right now, the whole of that element that we display to user, welcome to what? Digital Zine Hub is already saved in what? In this method, and everything is in what? DI. Are you with me? Now, why did I omitted the .inner HTML? Because I am not creating content from JavaScript. I just want to modify what HTML I've already created. Look up here. Let me bring us back here. And if my intention is to pass content from JavaScript, I wouldn't have written this. Do you agree with me? I wouldn't have written this now. Does anybody observe anything here? Because, in other words, I'm not going to create variable and store welcome. What I am doing right now is manipulating. That is the DOM now. Manipulating. Let's go back to where I started something. Look up. Let's go back to, there's a place where I said JavaScript can access and manipulate change text, right? Images and style, right? You did not write it. You did not write that section. I said you should write it down now. The second definition I gave to us, where I said DOM represents your web pages or your web page what? As a tree of objects that JavaScript can access and manipulate. And I said things it can manipulate. One is what? Change text, right? What again? Images and what? Style. This one I'm doing now, I am styling. I'm changing the style. By default, this text is having what color? Black, right? Now, from JavaScript now, I want to manipulate the color. So now let's go back here. So I'll now come here and say di, are you getting it now? di.style dot color equals to red. You see what is playing out here now? End it here. Let me break it down. Look up here. That style is you acknowledging CSS in what? JavaScript. It's just like in HTML. Before we're able to write inner CSS, we open what? Style tag in the head now. Right? Even when you were writing inline, you activated an ID called what? Style. So which means that what? Whether in CSS or in the JavaScript, you must acknowledge the CSS using what? The style property. Now, color. In CSS, color, you were not quoting them, right? Because here we are referring to this as a string. That is why we are quoting it. So which means that what? That content that you have selected and stored in DI. Now, concatenate it with what? CSS, and then call CSS color property, then put what? Red. That is what we have just said. Am I communicating?
Yes, sir.
But now we want to prove, we want to change the text. By the time it outputs, it's not going to be what? It's not going to be welcome to what? Digital Zine Hub. It will be what? It will be welcome to JavaScript DOM. What are you doing now? You are using JavaScript to change the text, which is the first thing I mentioned there. Changing text, images, and style. two things we want to achieve here. It will change the text color from what? Black to what? Red, and then change the text to another text. So how do I acknowledge that? So I will now use another property. Now you will now see the reason why I took my time to break down those words, JavaScript DOM word property and the DOM method themselves. Now see what I'm going to do now. What do I want to capture? I want to capture what? The content. The content. I want to capture this time around. I want to capture this and change it to another content. So now look at it now. I will now use the property, one of them that I've mentioned, which is what? But I will reference where is that element that I want to change its content is stored, which is still what? DI. Are you with me? Dot what? Test what? Test what? Content. You know, remember we just talked about this now as one of the what? JavaScript DOM word property. Now, when you use this, you are targeting different things. You are targeting what? What you have between here and here. That is what you want to manipulate now. So what exactly do you want to achieve there? You will equate it to, you are bringing your own, you are acknowledging it as a string. What will replace that is what? Welcome to my JS DOM what? Training. Are you with me? Yes, sir. You don't even need to get home and read again. In fact, from the class directly, everything should enter your brain permanently. Then I end it. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do now is to go to the HTML and output, right? Let's comment this line. Let's comment everything. Let's say we comment everything up. Look up, look up, look up, look up. Let's comment everything. First, let's go to HTML and output this file. Let's see what we'll be seeing so that when JavaScript function comes in, we'll see the difference. So let's see what ordinarily we just HTML, what we are getting so that we to sync properly. What are we seeing now? Let's look at two things here. The write-up is welcome to Digital Z Hub, right? And the color is what? Is black, right? Now let's go and activate those JavaScripts and check again. What do you get now? So what have we been able to do now? We just qualify one of the things we highlighted that the DOM can do. That was change text and the style, right? Quickly, classwork, where everybody gets here. You can create your own different concept. It may not be this. Just see how you can formulate something different. That is all about the first one. Now let's look at the second one, B. The second JavaScript DOM method. And that is query selector. Query selector. Query selector. Remember I said these are case sensitive. We have query selector, not query selector all. Just what? Query selector. Let's define it. What type of JavaScript DOM function is this or method? Right. Query selector selects the first element. Query selector selects the first element. The first element that matches a CSS selector. E.g., like .class, comma,
hash ID or tag. Now, what we are practically saying here is that this one is the same thing with what? The concept of what? CSS. How were you selecting element in CSS? If an element is class, you start with what? Dot, right? If an element is ID, you start with what? Hash, right? And then where is not ID, neither what? Class. You call the direct name of what? The element. So this one is the same way you use CSS, but in JavaScript what? Form. So anybody who understands that CSS concept will not find it difficult to understand query selector, and it can only select what? The first one. So let's look at the example. So the example also, you break it into HTML example and the CSS example. So let's assume that we have an element H2 and we have an element H2. Then let's give it a class. Let's give it a class. And the class, let's say the class is we. Or let's say the class is pro. All right? And I want contents that will change. So let's say welcome to our Pro JS coaching. So this is the text we want to change, but this time around, we are going to select it with another word, JavaScript word, DOM method. So now we go back to our JavaScript. So we are going to also, first of all, what? Express it. That is, we are going to store the whole of the elements and the method in a variable. So I can just say what? Let pro, or let's say PR. Let's say PR is equals to document dot what? Dot query selector. Query selector is a function. Then I just mentioned that the way you use CSS, which means in CSS, if it's a class element, right? We start with what? Dots, right? This element that we want to model, is this a class element? Let's go back to HTML. Is this a class or ID? It's a class. And what is the class name? Pro, right? So I will say dot what? Dot pro. So this is actually following CSS rule 100% when it comes to the way we select elements by their ID, by what? Their class. So that's a concept. So which means that you have also captured, you have also grabbed that particular element with class name pro and store it in what? PR. So as far as this line of code is concerned, the whole of that element is what? Present here. Now that we have grabbed it, what do I want to do with it? I want to style it, or I want to change the text. I will not call the name of the variable which is currently holding it, which is what? PR dot what? The CSS property in JavaScript, which is what? Still what? Style. What do I want to change? This time around, I'm changing the font size. No, I told you that you can do some of those CSS work right in JavaScript, right? Now, let us change the font size, and this is how you write it in JavaScript. Because in CSS, we normally write what? Fonts. How do you normally write it? Font hyphen, right? Size. But it's not like that. The same name, but we are not following that rule. You write everything together, but you are following what? The camel what? Case. Then equals to, I want to increase the font size to 60 what? PS. All right. So who can tell us, or let me explain because of time,
So the whole of this line is to what? Is to modify the elements you have captured and stored in what? In PR, because the element have currently a particular size that is not up to 60 what? PS. So what we are saying is that what from JavaScript, it will change the what? The size from that size to 60 PS. So that is what that line of code we do. So the next thing is we want to also capture the contents. We want to change the contents. So I'll do the same thing. I'll do PR dot. I will use another word, DOM property, because right now the motive is different. The other time was the size, the appearance, right? But now the content. So I will use which property? Let me know whether you are following. Test what? Content. Test content equals to, what do I want to change it to? I want to change it to what? We offer. In fact, want to change the what? To register with us call or WhatsApp. WhatsApp plus 2347069665919. So if you want us to train you online via Zoom, just like as you are watching, that is the line to call. So we want to change it to this, but I will run it. So I will end this. Now, let us comment this out. Let's see the default HTML appearance first. Let's go back to the page. What do we have? Welcome to what? Our Pro.js coaching. Now, let's bring back the JavaScript and go back. What we have? See that the size have changed. Are you with me? Now, just to explain further, if I can come here, I can copy. If I want to do multiple CSS styling, just like the way, in CSS, once we call one selector, we'll give it color, we give it size, we give it different property, right? So if I want to achieve that now, I will copy this, Ctrl+C, paste, then I will change here to what? What would I change here to? Color, right? And then define the color to what? Let's say blue, right? Then if I want to put another property, the same thing. Now, if I go back and run, can you see it now? So if you are smart, you can start directly from, so let me give us a few minutes to also achieve this quickly. Go back to the code. Okay. Please, this shouldn't take us more than 5 minutes, please. I know some people have already done it, right?
All right. Let's take note of the following as part of what we have used so that we can have proper understanding about them. The first one we did was change text, right? Change text. Change text. Or just write as subheading, changing text, command, HTML, and style. Once an element is selected, kind of subheading, changing text, HTML, and styles, once selected. So the first thing we want to look at here is, so this is just to go through what we have done, and at the same time to still echo them a little. So the first one, you write change tests, change tests. Notes, use dot tests content. Use dot what? Tests content. To change only the tests. To change only the tests. To change only the tests. So I don't want to explain it because we have already applied it, right? So I just want to tell us why, where did we use it? Here, right? Good. So let's go to the next one. Change HTML. Change HTML. Change HTML. Now, use dots. Use dot inner HT. Use dot inner HTML to insert HTML tag. To insert HTML tag. To what? Insert HTML tag inside an element. So that each time you use this, that is what you are doing. Have we used this? If we have not, so that I can re-explain it. Have we used this? We have now. Or should we still? We have used it, right? But did you use it to insert? Look at the statement very well. We have not used to insert HTML, right? Okay, so let's just look at the example here. Maybe after writing it, you tell me whether we have done it. So let's say document dot get elements by ID by ID. By ID, let's say the ID is you. Then dot inner HTML is equals to string. So let's call the whole of that HTML tag let's say bold tests added. Just an example. So what would this do? Anybody have idea what will happen? I need to also close the, as usual, we need to complete it a tag. Which of the tests? The B tag is just for bolding, right? Yes. So which of the elements do you select? We have not created it in HTML now. The element with an ID, what? U. Is it created? No. So let's go to HTML and create another element with, let's say P, and then let's just give it ID. Let's give it an ID U. An ID U. So let's say JS training. If I go back to the browser, what do you notice? Bold text added, right? What do they type here? What do they put there that it should output? Yes. But how come it had changed? Can anybody tell us the reason? Something I've explained in the class.
Because you have already supplied the what? The HTML, the contents, right? The element. So if I remove, so remember I mentioned when we said that what? If you create elements in HTML and give it content, and you still set content from JavaScript, JavaScript will override what? I mentioned it now, yes. Right? That is what has happened. So all these things that you are putting here now, JavaScript have what? Deleted them and pushed its own inside. So which means that JavaScript has already replaced the whole of this with this. Because this is like value you are storing in this word variable. Did anybody understand it? So what have you been able to change now? You change the HTML. Change the HTML. That is what you actually did there. So under accessing style properties, I think we have also done something there. Accessing style property. We have done that. Can you confirm that we have done that? Or we should do it again? Accessing style word property. We are able to add style now. That does style color, right? Good. Now let's quickly go to handling events. Let's go to handling events. Handling events. So, right, like I've explained before, events, let me also, so handling events. I said events are actions. Events are what? Actions that happens in the browser. You're writing? Events are actions that happens in the browser, such as clicks, key press, form submission. You know, we can create an event that as soon as somebody submits, click on the submit button, JavaScript should do something, should display maybe thank you for filling the form. So let's quickly look at the example of this concept. Remember, hope you know where we are coming from. Under what? Under, there's a place where I mentioned what? JavaScript what? DOM properties, right? We mentioned what? Is it under property? Under, that's DOM method, we mentioned what? Events. I mentioned which other one again? Method, under method, right? Good. All right, so let's quickly take an example on this. An example of this, we're going to work with button because we're talking about what? An action that will be triggered on the browser. So we want a situation whereby, if, for example, now you have a product display in your page, I'm trying to cite a practical and a real life scenario in your website. You don't want to, or let's say you publish different words, product images, and you now add a button under each of them that to see the price, click. You did not directly tag the price. So you want the user to click first before they can know the what? The price. So when they get to a product on the page, they will click on the button you have provided, then they will get to know maybe the product description, the name of the product, you know, the type, the price. So that is just the idea. So let's go to HTML and create an element called what? Button. I believe we all know that what? There's an element called what? Button, right? Now, this is, you know, we talk about different ways of adding JavaScripts to your HTML. I said internal, inline, and what? External. And that time I said I want to suspend what? Inline. So all that we have confirmed so far, what we did was internal and what? External. So inline, you need to call one of the JavaScript what? Event property, which is what? On click. On what? Click. On click is an attribute that we use when we want to communicate what? JavaScript event directly on the HTML element. On click, what do you want? Change color. So we want to start from, you are going to go home with a lot of assignments. Change what? Color. Change color. So change color, on click, change color. This should be a name of the function we are here to create. So this change color comes in here. Change color is a function that is yet to be created. So in other words, once they click on this element, an action will be triggered, and that action we call the function scripts. That is what you have just written here. So how will they see the button to know that there's a button we have to click? Just write what? If it's that scenario I cited, you say, okay, to see the product detail, click here. You put a kind of descriptive statement there. So I'll say, okay, click what? Me to change color. Click me to change color. So that is what they will see. For example, now if they come here, look at it here, this is a button. So what we are targeting is that if this happens to be one of our web page, when somebody gets here and click on this, something else will happen. That is what that click is an event. And what will trigger that event is the function. So here you have only created a function, and you are yet to write the function in JavaScript. So to create a function, I'll go to JavaScript. Remember that I've taught you how to create function, right? Function start with what? Function what? Keyword. Hope you have not forgotten. Function what? Keyword. Followed by the what? The function name. The function name is exactly what you put here. That's what you come and copy. It must align, Control C. Then go back to your, and then put it here like this. That should be your function name. Then create what? The declaration block. Remember in our function class now, we know this, right? So what do you want to happen? Change color. That is CSS what? Property, right? So how do you want to select that element? Is that element with an ID? Let's go there. Did we give it any ID? There is no ID. All right. So what I will do is that I will just use any element. I will just use, what will I use? I will just come here and say, okay, let's create p tag just to output it. The p tag, give it what? ID, let's say what? Text. ID, text. And then let's say we put a hello world. So I just want to use that to call that element, to display it, just to render the JavaScript function. So here, what is the function? Document dot get element by what? ID. And the ID I am using is what? Text. It doesn't work, we troubleshoot it. Try to apply a concept. Dot what now? Style. changing the color, it means what? You are referencing what? CSS. Style dot what? The property, which is what? Color, right? If it is background color, you write the background color, but the way you write is remove the hyphen, make sure that what? The background is what? Small letter. Then the color start with what? Capital letter. And then equals to, let's say what? Red. So if I come back here, let's right click, what happened? So let's add the ID to what? To the main element we are talking to, which is what? The button, right? This is where we are supposed to add the ID. The idea, I made mistake somewhere, right? In my JavaScript. Oh, because thank you very much for that observation. Intend to troubleshoot. So can you see it now? So as I click on this button, it's changing the color of what? That text. Because that is the reason why I did not write. We check now, I have to create another element. Please look up here, look up here. You know, I'm supposed to, if this is what I want to change its color, right? I will have added what? The ID here. But I deliberately created another element because I am sending this just a button to control this element. Just like the way you have the products. And then when they click to show the what? The price. So let's quickly do something on our own with this logic. Now, your classwork now, increase the size. Increase the size and also add background color to it. That is what? Once they click, look up. Once they click on this button, it will increase the size while you are still having this color and also give it what? Background color. So that is your classwork. Let me see how you do that. Not from CSS, so from JavaScript. So start now. Let me see. Okay. So what I actually asked us to do, look up. You notice that when the user click on this text, this button, changes the color, right? At the same time, we want the size to also what? Change. So the only thing I am going to do now is to call the elements. What you change is the color. So you just Ctrl+C, paste it, repeat it. We are selecting the same element. That is the meaning. And then, but we are changing what? The CSS what? Property to what? Font size, right? Font. And then I said the S should be what? Capital what? Letter. Then the size. Let's say the size should be 40 PS. So if I go back now and then they click, you see that. Now, if I also want them to change the background color, so I will also paste, then I will change here to what? Background color, that is what? Capital letter what? C. Background color. Then I'll change it to, let's say, black. So if I go back there now, I click, you see it now, right? Now, are you following? So if you want to add more, that is how you do it. But it is more flexible in CSS. That is why I looked at CSS is the one doing everything. But when you know some of these tricks, there are minor changes you can effect directly from what? JavaScript. So write this topic down as where we are going to continue from. Don't forget to, if you like, forget, I will jump to another topic. The next class we'll be looking at, we are still under what? Events, right? So the only one we have confirmed is what? The click, right? So the next class will take another example, and that will be using add event listener. I'll start from there. We'll give another example where we will use add event listener. Add event listener. But your assignment is for you to practice everything, save your work because you are going to show me, and don't use any of the examples we have used. Create your own practice examples, create different concepts, what you want to achieve. There's a way you can manipulate all this to have more real design. So I'll see you in the next class. So like I've said before, in case you want to reach out to us to train you via live Zoom, just WhatsApp us on +2 70 69 66 5919. So with this number, you can give me a call direct, and you can also WhatsApp me and book for your online training. At the end of the day, we can give you registered certificates. Bye for now.